Good morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 7:47 is the time. Let's talk to Conservative MP Miriam Cates, who joins us now to talk about, well, all the latest sort of deep side stuff involving trans madness. And we talked about the war on motorists earlier, the war on women. Good morning to you, Miriam.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Every single day I wake up and there is yet another story involving women being sort of basically erased from existence. I mean, this time it's from the General Medical Council that removed the word women or woman from documents about maternity leave. Not quite sure how many men that affects, and menopause. Again, other than the mood swings, not quite sure how many men that affects. And also, we discovered that a well-known health writer writing about periods for girls, giving advice to parents on how to deal with their daughters, not children's, their daughters' first period, and what advice to give and how to handle it. And that article being massively censored, take away all the references to women and girls to talk about bodies and talk about people, when the only people who have periods are women and girls. What do you make of it?
Well, it is absurd, and despite being very involved in this issue, I am still surprised when I read these things, and apparently intelligent, well-educated people at the top of their professions can actually write and say things like this and create these kind of policies. But I think it does show how much more prevalent this issue is, though, in the public consciousness. It's a really good thing that our mainstream media are willing to write about this. They weren't 18 months ago, so that's an improvement. But let's be honest, nobody at the GMC actually believes that women can become men and men can become women.
Well, if they do, I really don't want those people working as doctors.
Yeah. If they really think that, don't. Very few people actually really believe this because it's so patently untrue. It's so patently at odds with reality. This is about signalling status. And of course, the moral of the Emperor's New Clothes story was about if you prefer status to reality, you will eventually be made to look a fool.
Yeah. And when you talk about status, what you mean is like this is it's a high status opinion. It's like being a supporter of Remain and believing that trans women are women. Although they want supporting Remain, absolutely fine, no issue with that. But saying and insisting that trans women are women and that therefore there should be access to all single female spaces and the like, that somehow that makes you a good person, a virtuous person.
You are an ordinary person who is concerned with reality. I am so enlightened I don't have to believe in reality anymore. It doesn't affect me. And, of course, there are some people who genuinely hold to this point of view. And that is a respected point of view. I mean, I completely disagree with it. But if you genuinely believe that, let's have an argument. But I think most people who say these things, they don't really believe it. It is about signalling status. And it's about getting in with a crowd who believe those kind of things.
But here's the thing. This hasn't happened. People say, oh, what does it matter? I mean, what does it matter? They just want to be inclusive of trans, so it would be trans women trans men who are actually women. So the only reason they would have a period is because, by the way, or have menopause or need maternity leave is because they are women. So, they're already covered by it. But this never happens with men. So whenever you're talking about men's health, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, check your bits and all of that, they never ever talk about people with prostates. It's always men, check your prostate. Why is it only happening to women who are being erased in this way, but not men? Because that's where I think it's sinister.
Saying that this is just a high status belief, I'm not at all saying we shouldn't be concerned about it. We absolutely should. Because whilst a small group of people are using this to virtue signal, it has an enormous impact, a very regrettable impact on ordinary people, especially ordinary women. And I think that is a really good question, Julia. And I think at the heart of the whole trans movement is a deep misogyny that not only wants to erase women, but wants to say that men can be women and when men can have apparently all the rights and the amazing opportunities that women have. And but you just look at the Russell Brand story today, and I don't want to comment on that either way really, but you can't look at that story and say there's no difference between men and women. There absolutely is a difference between men and women, and that is why women need special protections, including single-sex spaces, the protection of the law, not just the protection of the law, but the protection of the whole of society, to agree that women, as the traditionally weaker sex, and I mean that in a physical way, we are weaker, we do need the protection of men around us if we are going to live safe lives and be able to take advantage of the kind of opportunities that feminism has won for us over the last half century. But it is all about erasing women, and this is just so, it's not only misleading, it's dangerous. It's dangerous for women not to understand if they need a smear test or if they need a particular type of test during pregnancy. It is obfuscating our language, and it's not going to end well.
No, exactly. Yeah, pregnant people and the like. I mean, the thing is, there is some hope on this. We've seen some schools, well, parents basically winning over on things like schools where they impose unisex toilets, so boys and girls, in primary school and in secondary school, being forced to use toilets with each other. No one wants that. The girls don't want it. The boys don't want it. The parents don't want it. I don't think most of the teachers want it. But for some reason, someone decided this was a good idea. Again and again, though, parents are now saying, no, this isn't fair. This isn't what our girls want. Just not wanting to be in an enclosed space like that, or with members of the opposite sex. Again, and no one wants it. But it's very interesting. The Equality and Human Rights Commission, their chief executive, Marcel Boo, has said that the government must urgently publish its delayed trans guidance for schools to provide teachers with much-needed clarity. And it's Sex Matters, the organisation run by Maya Forstatter and Helen Joyce and many other fantastic women who fought the good fight on this. Basically, contacting the Equalities Regulator over the last year or so, saying, the Equalities Act is being misapplied in schools. Head teachers think that they're going to be accused of discrimination under the law if a 13-year-old girl says, actually, I'm a boy and I want you to refer to me as he, him, and call me Bill. Now, and forcing children, the other pupils, to go along with this and refer to this person by the wrong gender pronouns and like. Now, teachers are terrified they're going to be sacked. Some who stand up against this do get sacked, but there is an absolutely vital need for the Equalities Regulator and the government to be very, very clear about what you can and can't do, because forcing teachers and other pupils to lie and pretend that the girl or the boy sitting next to them is the opposite gender, and forcing them to do that's thought police territory, and it's not good for those kids who believe that they are trans.
It is I've said this before, but I think it is almost a psychological experiment on a whole generation for people in authority, for adults in authority, to say to a child, you've got to call this boy a girl, even though you know they're actually a boy, and every time you say it, you know it's a lie. What's the impact of that on an entire generation? And of course, it's not happening to every child in every school, of course not, but it's widespread enough that this is a serious concern. But this development with the Equalities and Human Rights Commission is a really good and interesting development. So one of the reasons that the government has said it's not able to issue clear guidance to school that says you must treat boys as boys and girls as girls is because of this advice that Sex Matters have said was mistaken advice, issued in 2014, that essentially says to schools, if you don't go along with this, you will be guilty of discrimination. Now, I think it's perfectly reasonable for head teachers then to be very worried about this. They want to be on the right side of the law. Of course they do. Their business is teaching and learning. They are the experts at teaching maths and English. They're not legal experts. They need to keep themselves on the right side of the law. So this mistaken guidance in 2014 is at the root of why the government hasn't issued guidance sooner. So this is a really, really positive development, because if the Equalities and Human Rights Commission can now reissue that advice and say, no, actually, it is a matter of safeguarding to treat boys as boys and girls as girls, you're not discriminating against a boy by not letting him use the girls' toilets, then that is the platform that I hope will enable the government to issue this good advice and really sort out the situation in schools. This is a very, very positive development, and all credit to Sex Matters for probing this for persevering in this and getting, hopefully, an answer that is very positive.
Absolutely. We'll keep our fingers crossed for sanity returning. I'm not hopeful, not quite as hopeful as you, but I hope I am wrong. Miriam Cates MP has been an absolutely fantastic driver on this one. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Quick word to Emma Revel, who's been joining me all this morning. I mean, as a mum, of a teenage girl, I'm very worried about this, particularly the social contagion in schools of this.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you and I have disagreed on various elements of trans issues in the past, but when it comes to medical issues, I think we fundamentally agree. When you're talking about anything related to a woman's biology, you need to acknowledge that they're women and that it is a biological difference between men and women. I went on a first aid course that used the phrase pregnant people several times.
And did you speak up?
I didn't, but it did drag me to the wall.
You see, you've got to speak up and say, no, I won't, but I will not accept this. You've got to do that. Come on, people. At 7:56, it's the time. Up next, more on Russell Brand. This is Talk Breakfast.